today Guild Chat came out. Oh yeah, that show, right? That live stream that Arenanet do every Friday. And they really haven't missed too many. Who remembers watching that before Heart of Thorns? Well, today, I decided to tune in, which I've been terribly neglectful on. They actually had a small section with Colin Johansson, in addition to some other stuff we'll talk about in the video, expressing some of the changes coming up in the future of the game. And right at the end, they did a little teaser you can see on screen right now, and that is core Tyria gliding. So I'll go through in the same order that they went through, and specifically, most that we've got to talk about is in the very brief, really, comparatively, section that they did have with Colin, which, to be honest, was a little bit like news of news. As in, there will be news coming, guys, check it out. But there were some really valuable insights, actually, to draw from it. Specifically, I was quite hooked on the little tidbit suggesting about when Heart of Thorns development really started and how long they actually had to work on that expansion, as well as a few other things. So, here's the idea, okay? Next week, on Tuesday, we're going to be getting a State of the Game blog post. I believe this is on Tuesday, talking in great detail about the next 3 months of Guild Wars 2, the first 3 months of 2016, and also in general their focus for the future. And the general idea of it is development balance, and by that they mean, how do they balance what they're working on? The Guild Wars 2 is a big damn game at this point. We know that there's a crap ton of stuff on the table, and where's that balance, right? How are they going to make another expansion and support a live game, and consider that that live game is across 3 core game types? And that's really, I guess, what they were trying to stress. So, first thing, a few small announcements. Number 1, Matt Pennebaker is putting a lot of changes out based on legendary weapons, collections, and their current implementation. We all know, I mean, I haven't even done too many of those legendary collections at the moment, or looked into it very much, but we all know there's a lot of broken stuff, things that aren't particularly fun, and the idea here is that over the next couple of months, I guess that the next 3 months, if this is what State of the Game blog post is going to talk about, we're looking at a lot of changes to those to make them as fun as they can be, to stop stuff like events failing, things we've basically heard of before, but they're going to nail that down before looking at the new legendary weapons. And the idea is actually sound. I know it's sad to hear, oh, it's going to be a while before new legendary weapons based on information like that, but it's a sound idea because it means the mistakes they made originally with Heart of Thorns hopefully don't get repeated with the live updates that come out over the year. And that is also, as well, just to be clear, because it sounded a little bit on the stream like they weren't having any progress on future legendary weapons at all. That is not the case. Colin specifically mentioned, oh, I've seen loads of the new legendaries, and of course he said they were all very excited and cool looking. So they do exist. I think it's just that there are kind of 2 phases to implementing new legendary weapons. One, designing the weapon itself, getting the visual effects and all that stuff going, and then the other side is integrating it with collection systems and the mastery system, I suppose, to a small extent, and actually, you know, creating the scavenger hunt stuff itself. So I think that they've sort of done the first of those, and then the latter of them is what they'll do once they fix all the current stuff. So that was one thing that they mentioned. Another thing was a post about the changes to Season 2 of PvP, which I'll do a dedicated video on. It's very important to me. I want to talk about Season 1 of PvP, sorry, very shortly, but it kind of addresses everything people want except solo queue versus team queue. And then the other thing that they mentioned is the whole balance update idea. This was really rewarding for me, okay, because for 2 years, ever since they came out with the idea of shaving skills, alright, which isn't actually something I've heard them say for a long time now, but they came out with the idea of very slightly tweaking skills, ever so slightly, in multiple updates to bring balance to the game. And I have always very audibly complained that there are not enough balance updates. We had like 2 in one of the years, right? For the entire year, 2 actually reasonable balance updates. The rest was just bug fixes and tooltip changes and stuff. And I've always very vocally complained that their ideas for balance do not match up with the infrequency of balance updates that we were suffering from for a while. And Colin specifically said, you know, reiterated that every 3 months or so, over 2016, we're getting a massive balance change. And then, between those larger balance changes, they're going to be doing tweaks that address minor things. It's still a shame, yes, that they never did one before the first season. But, you know, that water's under the bridge at this point. Guys, I'm happy to hear that they're doing more, and it should be coming pretty soon. So, let's just see what the scope of these are like. I actually think that is a release pace for patches that I'm pretty happy with. And I felt really good. Towards the end, Colin was like, yeah, we're all aware that this is something some players have wanted for a long time. More frequent balance patches and clear times for when they're coming. And I was like, yeah, that's me. I'm one of those players. Awesome. And it was something that put a smile on my face. What can I say? Alright, so let's talk a little bit about this blog post on the 12th and the idea of development balance. So here were some of the interesting things. they talked a bit about how they've developed Guild Wars 2, and they released the game, and then basically for the first 2 years, through the remainder of the first year, the second year, the third year, they were doing a lot of stuff to be able to push out lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of updates. And, of course, that's what we saw with the Living World, but they kind of peaked with that. Then, this last year, 2015, we, of course, saw that there was very little that went into the game at all. Just basically an expansion, and they shifted very heavily in the other direction. And this is something that has been a conversation among, the Guild Wars community, probably among them as devs, for a long time, and that is, what balance do they strike? And Colin basically said to us, we're going to try and strike that balance in the middle. Those words, to me, are kind of empty. Because, I very clearly, I could link you guys, if I did the digging, to videos of me talking to you back in 2012, saying the exact same thing, saying that the expectations were that they were going to do a balance of streaming updates so people can get consistent updates, while at the same time working on future expansions. That's what we always assumed they were going to do, and never ended up happening, and Heart of Thorns ended up 3 years after release instead of 2 years or whatever. Some people may have considered to have been too late. So, it's nice to hear a contemporary comment from a dev such as Colin, saying that that's the plan, to hit that balance. But, it's up to them whether they actually do. I don't know when that plan ever got changed originally, but we'll see. What is interesting about this, though, and don't miss it, because as far as I'm aware, this is the first this has happened. This was explicit confirmation here that another expansion is coming. This is explicit confirmation. Heart of Thorns was not, a failed experiment. And they're going to be doing more expansions. And you might think, WP, obviously it wasn't going to be a failed experiment. It's an expansion. It's tried and tested. It's proven in other MMO formats and so on. That's a fair point, but you also do have to consider, even though there was a lot of hype around Heart of Thorns and so on, with the way MMOs work, with the way expansions work, you get a big spike of players, then it all goes away. Until the next expansion, there's a big spike of players, and then it all goes away. And Arenanet, I think, were trying to avoid that for a long time. I think that's why they went with the Living World. They didn't want the spikes. They wanted consistently high player base. Their frequent updates were always being marketed to the general gaming population, hopefully, and slowly over time, they would continue to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And that was the Living World idea. And then to go back to expansions is to kind of, accept this huge player base fluctuation idea, which I do think is very much true with Heart of Thorns. But yes, there's another expansion. This is great news to me. I'm very excited about the idea of Guild Wars 2 being a game that has expansions with Living World as bridges between them, and that's, at least for me, and maybe I'm a little out of the loop at the moment, the first I've really heard that, they're going for expansions. Now, here's another thing. Here's perhaps how they're hoping to hit that balance. If you're a little bit cynical like I am, this is something else Colin was talking about, and that is when it comes to the updates and the future expansions for the game. Again, we've kind of heard this before, but that they are really not going to be expanding on the systems anymore. That everything is building into those systems. And maybe that's how they are going to manage to do it. You've got to remember that when they were originally doing Living World, they also had a lot of other stuff to add. Stuff like the wardrobe system. Things that people came to expect as basic things that should occur in MMOs. And Guild Wars 2 didn't have them. So they were kind of playing catch up on that regard. Well, now they're basically saying, look, these systems are in place. That's it. We're adding depth. And for some of you, you might not really appreciate the value of a comment like that. It took me a while to be really excited. But what you just need to realize this means, guys, is more quantity. I stand by my statements that Heart of Thorns, in terms of its story especially, which is what I'm very excited about, but also exploration, the amount of maps, the amount of raid content we've had so far, and all that stuff, the amount of legendary weapons we had, all of those things, it suffered. Heart of Thorns didn't suffer because of what they put in so much, for me, as the lack of quantity. If there was more to everything, I think it would have been an exponentially better expansion, because the more there is, the less people fixate on what's bad about what little there is already there. And so this means a lot of good stuff. This means that they recognize they're at a high quality with a lot of stuff, but they just need more. And focusing on the content rather than more systems is definitely the way to go. And then that may also help them straddle that line of frequent updates and an expansion too. Good luck, Arenanet. It's going to be pretty hard considering you're supporting 3 different game types. Now, here's the, on that note, other thing to mention. World vs. World doesn't count for everything I just said. Yeah, World vs. World is the one place where they're still not happy with the core systems that are in the game, and we all know there's a big overhaul coming to World vs. World at some point. What new information did come here, though, was Colin's mentioning of the fact that this World vs. World update was supposed to be out before Heart of Thorns. Now, if you've been watching closely, I believe, like, after we realized Devon Carver wasn't, like, helming a lot of stuff, and he was talking about some of his last little while at Arenanet, he was talking about how he'd been working on a lot of big Wild vs. Wild updates for a long time ago, a big overhaul. Now we kind of very clearly have word from them that they were working on a big Wild vs. Wild overhaul. The original plan was to have it out before Heart of Thorns. The scope of that Wild vs. Wild overhaul got huge, and suddenly it couldn't be out before Heart of Thorns. Specifically, they didn't even say Heart of Thorns. They said they wanted the big overhaul out before the new Borderlands. That's what they said. And so you can take that two ways. You can take that as professional incompetence that they never managed to hit a deadline, or you can take that as exciting that this overhaul is clearly something massive because it sounds like it's being worked on for a damn long time now. So Wild vs. Wild is the exception. Wild vs. Wild needs more big systems and so on. And that's pretty much it. That's what you can glean from Colin. I suppose some of you guys are wondering in the back of your minds, is Super Adventure Box counting as one of their systems that they're going to continue supporting? And I don't know, maybe on Tuesday we'll see whether there's going to be some SAB release. Because we have to take every opportunity to ask for SAB, right? The other thing I would kind of put a twist on here is think about this, guys. What they basically said to us in the stream is, Guild Wars 2 of today, this is the game. You know, the core stuff, the way that they're doing the raids. I mean, fractals as well. They never talked about big changes to fractals, but, you know, the idea of fractals, at least that they've expressed to us. These core systems for PvE, for PvP, Wild vs. Wild's different, but for at least those, this is the game. This is what you're going to be getting. In 5 years' time, in theory, not too much should have changed. It's just there's going to be a crap ton of stuff to do. A load of new content and hopefully expansive new areas that we've been able to go to. In some ways, that makes me a little sad. I feel like some people may have been burned by the game, knowing this fact. It's a very simple fact now. Might think, it's not going to change enough for me to ever really get back into it. I know personally, I've got a lot of ideas kicking around in my head. If you guys follow my subreddit very closely, or the stream, you would have known about a bestiary concept I've been really excited about certain other things that I think the game desperately needs on the world building and lore side, like lore books and so on. And, you know, comments like this from the devs, while smart in many, many respects, also mean that ideas like those that I've been proposing and eventually may do a dedicated video on, as I had once planned to do, ideas like that may never really have a place anymore because they might just take a hardline stance. No, we are developing content. Quantity was too low with Heart of Thorns. Content has to go in, and that's going to be interesting to see how that affects things. I'd love to see what your opinions are there, guys. But yeah, so Tuesday, definitely a lot more information for you guys. I'll talk about a hell of a lot what's going on. It's nice to have a bit of news rolling. Goddamn. And after this, really, Colin didn't say too much else. He moved on, and we got into a big section of the stream that I won't spend very long on at all. Now, this is to do with the music of Heart of Thorns. Now, I will just say, I'm not going to talk about this very long on this video, but I will clarify. The Heart of Thorns soundtrack, to me, is one of the highest quality, most professionally, excellently executed parts of the entire expansion. Like, I feel like the quality of the soundtrack is so high, I would expect this could fit comfortably in, or the talent behind that music could fit comfortably into any AAA game they wanted in the damn industry. It is that fantastic to me. But here's the thing, I'm basically just a very casual music consumer. I don't know anything about music, I don't know anything about scales, I don't know any of these fancy terms they're coming out with, and I kind of want to kick old me, you know, 14-year-old me who decided he didn't want to study music any longer because he hated his teacher. But like, no, this stuff's fascinating, learn it. But regardless of my lack of understanding, it was a really cool section. They played basically and talked about the evolution of the Heart of Thorns main theme, as well as some of the other themes that went into the game, and it kind of seemed like an excuse to then plug the fact that the game is now out on vinyl. Either way, it was really interesting. It just took up basically most of the show. Before finally, the devs segued out into just a short clip. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, man. That's it. Like, what you're seeing here, it was pretty cool to see, actually, that they nailed the kind of explosive, whoa, mic drop end and could make chat freak out. So, core Tyria gliding. We can already do a lot of discussion just from the fact that we know the devs are looking into this. It could suggest multiple things. Now, the fact that they're doing it in ore could mean, or is very likely to mean, that core Tyria could be gliding, could come everywhere. But there's a big question of how that integrates with the mastery system. Are they doing this specifically just for Heart of Thorns people, or are they doing this for everyone? And when we get access to this, are we going to have different mastery tracks for different regions of the world that we can glide in? Some areas of the world just don't need gliding. Harathi Hinterlands, for example, is not a map that has a particular insane amount of verticality. I suppose some of the more interesting ideas are that this will tie into some kind of ore change, some kind of ore overhaul has been speculated about for God knows how long now, that the expansion's done. Maybe some live updates would deal with this before the living world. I don't know, like maybe that's a bit too ambitious to look at. But certainly the map they showed it off, Malcor's Leap. I mean, the drop at the place exactly where Malcor leaped off and then deploying a glider was the perfect place to show it for core Tyria. But does that mean it's going to be an ore-specific thing or the entire world? I have openly talked before about how I didn't think they'd do core Tyria gliding because it could break a lot of things, it'd be a lot of dev time, but certainly as well over time we have also discussed that it's not so much it breaks things, that there's a lot of bugs, but it's that it changes the flow of exploration for core Tyria in a huge way. And for as long as masteries are account bound rather than character bound, it means as soon as you get that, your experience of playing Guild Wars 2 on that count forevermore will be very, very different, even if you start on a new level 1 character. And I wonder whether Arenanet are aware of that, whether they're going to pay any mind to that, whether that's going to restrict the way we can core Tyria glide, or they're just going to go ham and be like, look, you guys want it? Have fun, go for it. It's very interesting to see what they do. I definitely want to have more discussion on that in the future, but for now, preliminary response from most of the community is that this is completely damn awesome, and I've got to say, it does look great being able to glide around in the Malcor's Leap. So yeah, that's basically Guild Chat for today. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope I managed to give you a little bit of insight on this very long stream. If you are interested in the music stuff, definitely do go check it out. And it's always really nice to see an artist talk about their craft. Or multiple artists, as it was in this stream, talk about their craft. There's this thing where if you're very good at something, or you're learning an art, you are never satisfied with yourself. You always see the flaws in your own work, but you're so far above the average person that they're like, oh no, it's really, really good, and all you can do is look at the flaws. And that was definitely something you could see being expressed in this stream. Can't wait for Tuesday and explicit information about the rest of 2013. Core Tyria gliding, though. That was a pretty big bomb. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.